What's going on, everybody? Teach back again with another video, and today we're talking about my Week 4 NFL Power Rankings after a very interesting Week 3 of the NFL season. Felt like a tough week to be a favorite, and there's going to be a lot of movement, and once we get to our top 3 in that conversation, that is going to certainly be a fun one. But let's waste no time and start talking about my Week 4 NFL Power Rankings, starting with the Seahawks coming in at number 32. Sorry, Seattle fans, you guys actually gave us a really awesome 4 o'clock game and a slate of 4 o'clock games that was kind of disappointing. Falcons Seahawks was actually pretty fun, but obviously Geno Smith can't lead the comeback. They fall to the Falcons, who were 32 last week. Therefore, they're going to go down to 32. Jets down 4 spots. They're at 31. You really could, interchange anyone from 32 to 29. The Texans coming at 30. Panthers up a couple spots. They're at 29. But even when they win in a division game against the Saints, still doesn't look pretty. So anyone through that bottom 4, it's interchangeable. You can sell it to me in any order, and I'd be okay with it. And then the Falcons, maybe the prettiest turd of the bunch. No disrespect to Falcons fans, but came away with the win. So did the Panthers, but the Falcons one was a little bit more compelling. It felt like they wanted to win. Again, still feels like the Panthers, even when they're playing good football, they're kind of working against themselves. Ben McAdoo again. That offense is. It's kind of a hard one to watch. So moving on from that, though, Commanders, that was an ugly game. It's only 24-8 in the final score, but if you watch the first half, that game felt like it was 50-0 at the break. So, not a pretty performance of the Commanders and Ron Rivera, man. I've been talking a lot about how Jack Del Rio's probably got to be kicked out the door. You got to get better there at DC, but also Ron Rivera is, a head coach who, defense is what comes to mind when you think about a Ron Rivera team. And I think he's done a good job stabilizing the culture. Talk about where it was at the end of the Jake Gruden era, but as much credit as I give him for, kind of bringing the locker room and improving the culture, bringing it all together, that's kind of dissipated. This team's gone from, his first year where they were under 500 but won the division. That kind of felt like a nice place to begin the rebuild, to where now it's like, oh, that was the high watermark. That's the most successful thing they've done, which that's brutal. That's tough. Things unfortunately have not taken off and gotten off the ground here for Washington, so it might be Ron Rivera as well. Can't cut the door. But that being said, I do like Scott Turner as an OC. I know this week wasn't pretty for the offense, but I still like overall what he's done with Carson Wentz. So maybe he's your interim. Norv Turner at one point was the head coach for, a different named Washington team, but obviously the same franchise. So maybe that Turner connection, leads into him being the interim, or maybe if they, in the offseason, if they don't move on from Rivera, they find somebody who wants to keep Scott Turner as the OC. That's what I'm kind of hoping for, but, that doesn't feel all that likely. Anyways, I digress. Let's talk about the Giants. Not a pretty Monday Night Football game. Battle between Cooper Rush and Daniel Jones looked like a battle between Cooper Rush and Daniel Jones. But that's not to say, you had the big run from Saquon, and, that last play from Daniel Jones kind of sticks out as the main thorn in his side. There's going to be turnovers. There's going to be things that make you go, oh, there it is. There's Daniel Jones. So it was kind of nice to see them peppering targets to Kenny Golladay throughout that contest. It's going to be interesting to see how he finds his role in that offense, or, what they're going to try to do to maximize the value of $18 million to what they thought was going to be wide receiver 1. But outside of Saquon, it's kind of hard to find some bright spots about this team right now. That being said, they are 2-1. Bears, also a 2-1 team. And, these two teams go head-to-head this upcoming weekend. So one of either the Bears or the Giants will be 3-1 at the end of Week 4, which... that's the NFL for you. How many people anticipated seeing that come into the season? But I still don't think either one of these teams is very good. I think it was Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus who said, feels like every stat line for Chicago feels like they're playing in a monsoon. Like what they had in Week 1 isn't an outlier for the rest of their season. That might have been someone else, but nonetheless, that is just an absolutely perfect way of describing this team. And that's how hard it has been to watch this offense. That's how hard this offense is working. So still not a very great football team. Let's move on to our next batch of a team, starting with the Detroit Lions. Only down a spot. A little bit of a choke job there, if I'm being honest, from Dan Campbell and the Lions. But division games, they play weird. Wish a team with that type of running game and that good of an offensive line could have, kept the clock on their side and could have ran out the clock and gotten a win against Minnesota. Felt really good about the Lions. Obviously I'm not going to change my perspective a whole lot because, in these power rankings, I'm more so weighing the team versus weighing where they are in the standings and measuring win percentage. Ergo, I see 2-1 teams at 25 and 26. So I don't know if the Lions would have changed all that much. But that being said, 2-1, coming off a win against division rival, I'm a lot more optimistic about where that trajectory is taking me versus, oh yeah, they blew a lead to the Vikings. So kind of a sour taste to leave my mouth, but still optimistic about where this team's going to go. I can't wait to see what happens when Jameson Williams is in that offense. The Jags, big winners, up a handful of spots here. I'll try to move out the way so you can see that, but nonetheless, they're up, from 28. So big time risers, and hey, we're starting to see from Trevor Lawrence, which we've been kind of waiting, and that on top of a really pesky, creative turnover, creating defense. And if that trend continues and this continues to be a unit that just, forces those turnovers, and, those can be variable week to week, they can be variable season to season. And maybe this is just one of those years where Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun are just creating chaos in the middle, and this team continues to take the football away from opposing offenses. And if that's the case, then, it provides a pretty high floor. Turnovers win a lot of football games for teams. And this team is still missing, talent. You still see that. They're not 100% where they want to be. But, again, credit to the defense, credit for Trevor Lawrence and his growth, and credit to Doug Peterson. Even if they're not all that talented, the pieces are at least put in the right direction. They're kind of putting them in the right foot moving forward. So, excited to see how that team continues to grow, and hopefully some of those young players take steps forward and this team just becomes more and more talented. I will talk about Travon Walker here, another interception, and kind of feels like, if the Jags move to an old school 3-4 where you're consistently dropping those outside linebackers into coverage, he'd be a really nice fit there. But again, I said this after the week 1, interception he had against Washington. His athleticism makes him awesome as a read and react player, and I thought, he already had at least a relatively stable floor as a run defender coming out of Georgia. So that plus, his read and react ability making him somewhat, a solid player in coverage. Again, you're talking about a high floor player, which only allows you to take the next year, 2, maybe even 3, to continue to work on him as a pass rusher. And then maybe by the end of his rookie contract, we're talking about a guy who, it all came together. It panned out. The athleticism, it all kind of morphed together into this awesome all-pro type of guy. So that's the hope, of course, if you're a Jags fan. But right now, he is giving you a high floor with, his run-stopping ability and what he can do naturally in coverage as a, awesome athlete. Anyways, leaving the Jags, let's talk about the Steelers. Yeah, that was a tough Thursday night football game. That was a hard one to watch, especially late. It's, close. You get that 23-14. Okay, we're going to lose by 2 scores, but it's only 9 points. Okay. And then, the score just kind of gets inflated towards the end. That's disappointing. Let the, Kenny Pickett's, rumor season begin. There's always going to be rumblings of when, Pittsburgh's going to make that move. But, going off in a, extended preparation to go against the Jets. And then that schedule behind it. This was going to be the week if there was going to be one before the bye week. I just don't think it's going to happen. So I think we're going to be waiting until we see Kenny Pickett. But that being said, I don't think that really changes a whole lot because Mitch Trubisky hasn't lost that offense. Really, the problem with this Pittsburgh offense is Matt Canada. As much as people want to give flack to Big Ben, the offense looks the exact same with him under center the last 2 years and what we're seeing so far under Mitch Trubisky. It feels like it's working against itself, and it feels like it's trying. As much as you want to isolate players in space, and that's like the Shanahan way. Matt Canada just does it in a complete different way. Instead of getting the ball in space to playmakers, it's more about one-on-one, isolated on one side of the field versus another. It's like, dude, you have 3 awesome wide receivers. Let's have them all on the field at the same time. Let's maximize. Let's get some creative route trees going here. So I don't know. It feels like a rudimentary offense behind a tough offensive line, tough in a bad way here. I feel like there's got to be a change made there at the play color. Now, that being said, I don't know who Pittsburgh returned to that's going to make it better, but that being said, it needs to be improved upon. The Colts up a couple spots, and, hey, good on Indianapolis. Now you got ones across the board, a win, a loss, and a tie, and that definitely changes kind of the outlook versus, 0-2-1. Needed a win, gotta have it in this type of week, and also definitely gave Frank Reich another 6 weeks where he can keep his job. Unless this team becomes 1-7-1, he's probably going to get through the rest of the season. So that conversation about who's in the hot seat from last week kind of pivots from Frank Reich and really kind of swarms around Ron Rivera right now. But, as much as, I think that game was more so Kansas City losing it versus Indianapolis winning it, the Colts are the team that came out with a win. So, give him credit there. And, hey, Jelani Woods looks like a nice piece in that offense. And that felt like a nice destination for him to land as this place that's always valued, tight ends in their offense and have been able to take more. I mean, Mo Alley Cox is the perfect example. Guy was a college basketball player from, my hometown in VCU in Richmond, Virginia. And they kind of just morphed his athleticism, brought him into the offense and had him fit. And I think they could do the same thing with Jelani Woods. So, good to see those early returns coming in a favorable manner. It's still rough, though, for Matt Ryan. And that offensive line still is not playing all that great. And you get Pierce, and he gets a big play for you. And you got Michael Pittman back. But, yeah, again, this offense just feels like it can't get off the ground. And I think Matty Ice has melted. I think it's melted Matt Ryan season. That guy's washed. I mean, that's just kind of the simplest way I can put it. And that offense is going to continue to struggle as long as he continues to have, that type of performance, and he looks that way throughout the rest of the year. Patriots down 2 spots, and they might be down a whole lot more. I just got to wait and see what this Mac Jones, high ankle sprain, what's that timeline looking like? Because in these power rankings, again, I'm weighing the team that I see on the field. They might be, coming down a few more spots once I get more details. It's going to timeline figured out for Mac Jones, and, have a tough matchup this upcoming week. So that's sorry, Pats fans. Sometimes injuries just kind of derail a season. And if you were a New England fan who thought you were going to get to the playoffs, I'm sorry. But if you're missing Mac Jones for 3 to 4 weeks or, whatever it ends up being, that's not going to happen. And it might be even longer than that. I'm no medical expert. So, yeah, that's tough for New England. And, especially in this week where Mac Jones didn't really look like Mac Jones against the Ravens, where he had a ton of, big plays, but also a lot of questionable decisions and turnover-worthy plays. So it was a little bit of a different Mac Jones experience, but it led to a big week for Devontae Parker, right? And that was, not that they gave up a whole lot, but that was, the offseason acquisition they made at wide receiver. That was the move. And we finally got to see Devontae Parker look like a wide receiver one. So that's tough. And hopefully Axel, Brian Hoyer has it in him and can kind of keep that offense afloat and keep it at a stable spot. But Matt Patricia, Brian Hoyer, yeah, not a whole lot to be inspired by on that offensive side. So again, this is a team that feels like they're probably heading in a negative direction in forward power rankings. The Browns up a couple spots. They got the win. Congratulations. Jacoby Brissett, a couple weeks in a row now where he's actually looked okay. He's not looked terrible. So other than, kind of getting a little hobbled toward the end of the the Jets game. Otherwise, he's looked pretty okay the last couple of weeks. And he's got this team in a position where I'm not going to be surprised if they're at or just above 500 by the time Deshaun Watson gets back in. So definitely a team that could be sneaky once we get to the very end of the season if they get in as a wild card. And Deshaun Watson's the guy that we saw on the field 2 years ago. This team could be dangerous for sure. But that being said, for the most part, it was 23-14 against Pittsburgh. So, at home on a short week, not the most impressive win. The score got inflated a little bit towards the end. But that being said, they definitely were the better team between them and Pittsburgh. Cardinals down a spot. Just still not a team that looks all that great. And it looks really discombobulated against the Rams. So I think part of that is, man, this offense looks like it needs DeAndre Hopkins bad. You've got a ton of targets for Hollywood Brown. I love that. But it's like, man, the corpse of A.J. Green still, he looked like he had lost a step last year. And it feels like it's only gotten that much slower this season. So yeah, adding DeAndre Hopkins back to that offense with Hollywood Brown feels like it, kind of diversifies your portfolio a little bit more. That is an offense in a Cliff Kingsbury scheme that isn't much flex I want to give him. It does need star level wide receiver, so it's not really a fair assessment of what his offense normally looks like. And then on the other side, man, yeah, that defense, it's gonna be piecing it together week by week. Just not a unit that really inspires a whole lot of hope in me. So, sorry, Cardinals fans. I know you're only down one spot in these power rankings, but yeah, I don't have a whole lot of nice things to say about your team as of right now. Titans move up a handful of spots and, much needed win against the Raiders. And I know we haven't gotten to the Raiders yet, but they're not far away. Again, power ranking is not weighting, records or anything here. But that was a Tennessee team that needed a win. And, just like the Colts, that kind of kept them in the division race. Like this was a week where one team or the other could have had a leg up on the other. but both came away with a win, so they're still neck and neck, but they're also still a game behind the Jags, so we'll see that, AFC South barn burner down to the finish. But, it was good to see Tennessee kind of get Derrick Henry back to the game. He looked like Derrick Henry of old. Still concerned about that offensive line long term, but, against that Raiders, front, they kind of got to push around Vegas. And that Raiders secondary is tough. So, good to see a big game from Robert Woods, see him, kind of get back to the level of play that we've seen in the past. And, Tannehill's still a little bit of a roller coaster, but better week than what we've seen leading up to it. And that defense is still a really solid unit. And, Matt Collins has a big game, but as long as Davante Adams doesn't spoil the victory here, then you should be in an okay spot. You'll let Matt Collins be the other guy. You want to take away him. You want to take away. When I say him, I mean Davante Adams because he's him. But you'll let Matt Collins get those yards or whatever because you're not letting Davante Adams take this game over in a way that once he gets going, it's impossible to slow him down. So. Yeah, big win there for the Titans. They avoid going to an 0-3 start. All right, we move on to the top half of these power rankings. The Raiders are the next team up, and I know, you could flip the Titans and the Raiders, sure. If you're going to be a stickler on it, that's fine. That's cool. 17-16, there's not much of a difference. But again, 0-3, not necessarily indicating where the standings would put these teams. There's still talent. But, man, if you're looking at this team from a betting perspective, I'd just lay off for a little bit because every big play they get on offense feels like there's a penalty or flag, something coming up. Offensive line kind of negates that big play. And, as much as I like that pass rush duo, Chandler Jones has been awfully quiet. And even, right as it feels like that pass rush is going to get going, that secondary is just not a great unit. So the ball's coming out quick. They're giving up chunk plays, and it just feels like that pass rush doesn't take over games like the way you would want them to. And also this team, this sounds so like old school football head. This team has no physicality in the middle. Like, think about what you see from the 49ers. I know that team lost too, and we'll talk about them in a moment, but think about, how they swarm to a ball carrier. Think about how D'Amico Ryans has coached up that unit and how physical they play. There is nothing resembling that in Las Vegas. So, there's just a couple things that really make me hesitant for the Raiders. They lack a level of physicality, but also any big play feels like it gets wiped away by the offensive line, and that secondary is just waiting to be picked apart. So I'm probably done, with any sort of, investments, if you will, with the Raiders in future matchups. But I still am optimistic Derek Carr can turn this around and Josh McDaniels will figure it out. But 0-3 start for him. After how it ended in Denver, that is tumultuous to say the least. Then the Saints, man, they're the team I have a hard time, having trust put into them. This is a week where you got the big plays, you just didn't finish drives, right? You got Chris Olave going for 150 plus, 350 plus passing yards through the air, but it's just like, what? Dude, this game was another one where it's like Alvin Kamara, what is going on, my man? Like, he just does not feel like himself. And the offense, just after it gets that chunk play, gets down the field, just stalls out. It just dies right there on the side of the road. So feels like this offense is still a bit of a work in progress, and because of that, and the volatility that comes with the Jameis Winston, especially, considering we were talking about him having 4 fractures in his back last week against Tampa Bay. I don't imagine he's playing at 100% right now. I'm good. I'm laying off right now. So the Raiders and the Saints, 2 teams I thought could be in the playoff mix, but probably headed down in future power rankings. So then we get to the Cowboys at 14. Cooper Rush, 3-0 as a starter. How about it, man? He's the truth, low-key. But no, I'm playing there. He's not better than Dak. Don't put me in the Sean McCoy bucket here, because I'm not. But that being said, he's done a nice job not losing games. That's the same thing I talked about last week. And, when you're going against the Giants this week, please just double down on that. Do not lose this game. We are the better team, despite the Giants, being favored and being at home. That team and that secondary is just not what Wink Martindale needs. Doesn't have the horses in line yet. So I kind of anticipated CeeDee Lamb having some big plays, and Noah Brown continues to look like he's got a nice connection there with Cooper Rush. Got to see the run game going. Saw a couple of runs from Zeke. It felt like Pollard's getting some big run, getting some shine, and Zeke kind of was like, hey, don't forget about me. Just got to see him run hard, so that was encouraging. And that defense, I know the Giants aren't necessarily a crazy offense, but that defense is quick. They're athletic, and Micah Parsons can take and ruin a drive at any moment. Trevon Diggs is around the football, so yeah, I mean the Cowboys are staying afloat with Cooper Rush, which makes this team that much more scary once they get Dak Prescott back, and hopefully that offense kind of takes a step forward to where they were at the beginning of last year. I know still no Amari Cooper, but yeah, Noah Brown I'm kind of optimistic about what he's been so far. We'll see if that's, an aberration or something that can stick throughout the rest of the season. But, get Dak back and then offense takes another step forward. This team could be kind of a scary, wild card, especially if the Saints start to fall off and they're too inconsistent. I could see the Cowboys getting in over the Saints, where I had, New Orleans in my preseason regular season predictions. But anyways, let's leave Dallas, start talking about the 49ers. Kind of an ugly loss there against the Broncos, and the Broncos are a spot ahead of them because of that win. These two teams after that game, and, really here, I'll kind of rechange my approach here. 10, 11, 12, 13 didn't move. And part of my thinking was, Vikings narrowly beat the Lions, took a comeback. So good to see them be able to do that. Comeback effort from Kirk. He still didn't look great. But 1 o'clock comeback, that's about the only time in window where Kirk Cousins is going to make that happen. So give them credit. They're staying in the top 10. I'd like to see Justin Jefferson get more involved. The Bengals take care of business against the Jets. They needed a win. They handled business. Still didn't look great. But nonetheless, it's a lot better than what we've seen the last couple of weeks. So steps in the right direction. The Broncos beat the 49ers, so I did flip those two. But that being said, so the graphics are wrong there. Apologies. That should be Broncos up a spot, 49ers down a spot. We'll fire that intern. But, not a whole lot separating. Therefore, we get the 11-10 score. It was ugly on Sunday Night Football. Both offenses just working through some of the kinks right now, which is a little bit, I didn't anticipate saying that for the 49ers because I'm looking at it, I'm saying, well, Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo, he's got his guy. I mean, that unit is basically the same as it was last year. The interior offensive line is lethargic, though, and that gets to the point where if you're missing Trent Williams for any sort of long-term period, I'm worried about what that offensive line might look like. And Jimmy G is not necessarily, he can move, but he is not somebody who necessarily has handled pressure all that well in his career. So figure to see a whole lot of, quick screens out to Debo the next couple of weeks, Brandon Ayuk, tight end screens too. I think you're going to see the ball getting out of Jimmy G's hands very quick if they're down Trent Williams and just getting out to playmakers at the line of scrimmage. So then get to the Broncos, and again, it wasn't pretty. But that being said, got the win, and you just need to take care of business at home. You kind of lived to stay in a playoff mix for another week as you continue to figure out the game management stuff. I know they brought in Jerry Roseberg, longtime special teams coach in the NFL. They showed him multiple times on the broadcast. You probably know who I'm talking about. But, that still needs to be ironed out and fixed, and Nathaniel Hackett's offense still doesn't look necessarily great. So, things to still be improved upon for Denver. But I will say, as much as this was the game they won, it weirdly enough was the game where they really didn't have the ball moving up the field. The last 2 weeks, they had choke plays. They were able to move it, had some long drives, and then they would just end in 3, or they would end in 0, or something like that. This was a weird week where D'Amico Ryans and that defense for San Francisco really just kind of stalwarted Denver's offense. So didn't really get off the ground, so a little bit of a step backwards, but you get the win. And maybe that step backwards is what will propel them forward. I don't know. I can't really rationalize that thinking. But anyways, that cluster all kind of stays relatively the same between 10 through 13. Chargers down 4 spots, and, I'm concerned about the health of Justin Herbert. And, if they're missing Rashawn Slater with a torn bicep, that sounds like it could be a season-long injury. Yikes. This team has to go out and sign Eric Fisher, because if their tackle combination is Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins, go ahead and wave the white flag, give it up, and let's move on to the next offseason for the Chargers, because they're not going far. And, Matt Filer's having a little bit of a down year. Corey Linsley's been hurt. Jalen Guyton's hurt. Missing Keenan Allen. I mean, that offense in and of itself is just kind of not resembling its normal self. So that's disappointing. And again, I still have a lot of problems with Joe Lombardi as a play caller. It just feels like they're not, as much as it can and should be Justin Herbert trying to take deep shots and whatnot. Missing Jalen Guyton's kind of the speediest receiver they have, so that's taking a step back. But also, sometimes the offense has just got to kind of neg you on in that direction and get you moving in that direction. So I'd like to see Joe Lombardi kind of be the catalyst to get Justin Herbert to take more shots. But that offense at certainly less than 100%, I don't know if we'll see it anytime soon. Let's move on to the top 8. This is probably best handled if I start from the top, so I'm going to break my order here a little bit. So I got the Bills and the Bucs staying at 1 and 2, and I know, and I had the Chiefs at 3 last week, so I know my top 3 all lost, and that was a headache to try to navigate how do I view these teams. So I have the Bills and the Bucs staying where they are, and part of my thinking is, again, I'm not measuring standings, I'm measuring how I think these teams stack up. And the Bills in that secondary, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for them to get healthy and kind of figure out who's the next man up. Also, The Heat, I know that affected Miami as well, but the team from Buffalo is certainly the one at a disadvantage, and there's only one side that's in the sun there in Miami. The other side has the shade, and it was Buffalo just sitting out there and roasting. So, home field advantage works to the advantage of Miami, figures it should. So because that, it makes it a little bit, I don't want to hold that against the Bills, but that home field advantage is gone at the end of this month. So, not really going to be something we see Buffalo dealing with a whole lot the rest of the season. And also, that last throw from Josh Allen, an underthrow to the flats, did not see that in my range of outcomes, but okay, cool, that one's out of the way. But the Bills hung tough, and I think that Miami team's just really good, and the Bills to be able to battle and stay in and get that safety late, and get the opportunity to potentially get the field goal, and clock runs out, Ken Dorsey slams headset, But all things considered, they went toe-to-toe with Miami in Miami, and really harsh conditions, and with their secondary at a falling percentage of health, I still am encouraged with what I saw. So I got them staying at 1, and then the Bucs, dude, that offense does not resemble that offense we saw last week against Green Bay is not anything what we'll see ideally when we get to the postseason. It might not be anything we see in like 3 weeks, right? Because even just heading into week 4, Mike Evans is going to come back. Sounds like Julio might be able to make a return, and Chris Godwin's going to be healthy here hopefully soon enough. So the wide receiver room is going to be fixed here with some time. That offensive line, though, I'm a little bit more concerned about. So if there was one of these two teams at 1 or 2, the Bills or the Bucs, who would fall? I think Tampa Bay and where their offensive line's at right now, I'd have them fall down a spot. But that being said, they're better than the Rams. So I'm not going to flip those two just because the Rams got to win and the Bucs lost. So I'm going to keep Tampa Bay over the Rams because I think of them as better than the Rams. And, coming into the season, 1 through 3 were kind of my front runner tier, the Bills, the Bucs, and the Chiefs. That leads me into the Chiefs. The reason they were the team of that 3 to fall was it felt like after that muffed punt from Sky Moore, this is solely my opinion. I haven't heard anybody else say this, but it felt like that was a team that kind of retreated into its shell, and instead of playing to win, they played not to lose. But while doing that, they also had a ton of drops and just didn't play at a Kansas City level of execution, which was really frustrating to watch. And I hate seeing teams play not to lose as opposed to playing to win. They played it really conservative. Now, that being said, even with the drops and feeling like Kansas City retreated into a shell, it took Chris Jones saying something I guess he shouldn't have. How you feel about that, I'll leave to you, but I think that's just stupid. I can't believe that cost the Chiefs this game. But that, engineers and keeps the drive alive for Indianapolis. They make the comeback, and Johnny Woods gets his second tutty of the game. So good on Indy for, taking advantage of the opportunity, but it took legitimately everything for the Chiefs to go wrong. But again, that mindset of we're going to start playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win. What was Andy Reid's offense? It looked like a completely different playbook than what we've gotten to accustomed seeing from Andy Reid, even just this season. So, just a really weird game there for Kansas City. So I did drop them and move the Rams up a spot because the Rams had a nice win against a division rival. Wasn't necessarily the prettiest game, but they're winning games even not at 100%, which I can take that as a positive for LA. Moving down the rest of that board, Ravens up a spot. Man, really fun game against the Patriots. That offense, Lamar Jackson might be your MVP front runner. If Allen and the Bills didn't lose, it'd probably be Allen, but Lamar and Josh Allen kind of feel like those guys at the top of the list right now. You got some timely defense. That defense still isn't looking great, but you get a late interception from Marlon Humphrey. It's like, okay, well, if you're gonna have a lot of offense and some timely turnovers, okay, that's enough to win games. We can work with that. Dolphins up a spot. They looked great. So they battled the Bills, and I was somebody who was saying that Buffalo will probably cover just because, I still think they're the best team in the league. But give a ton of credit. Not only did Miami, cover the 5.5, but dude, they went outright and they looked good. And they're in a 21-19 game, which if you had picked the Dolphins to win this game, you were probably saying something like, 35-31 or, 38-35 or 41-38. You probably anticipated a shootout. So the defense looked pretty solid and, enough offense. Now we'll have to see with this Tua Tagovailoa, investigation, health situation. That was a weird play in that game. Not necessarily the brightest moment coming out of this win for Miami, but nonetheless, we'll wait and see. We'll monitor the injury reports. But hey, Miami, congrats on the win. That was, I said last week, this is as good as the Dolphins fans have felt on a Tuesday in a while. Maybe this week is as good as the Dolphins have felt on a Tuesday in a while because, man, I know that felt good taking down, a lot of people's Super Bowl pick before the season. And then the Eagles and Packers are also up a spot. So, all 5 through 8 are up one spot. I'd love to move them up more. But again, I came into the season with the Bills, the Bucs, the Chiefs as my front runner tier. I'll move the Chiefs down because I didn't like what I saw and how they were playing against the Colts. But nonetheless, the Ravens, Dolphins, Eagles, Packers all moving up, and all those teams look really good. And we already talked about the Ravens, Dolphins. The Eagles, we kind of talked about this when we talked about the Commanders. They dominated in that first half. If it was 50-0, like if I only watched that first half and just did not see the score change, I could be convinced it was like 30-0 at halftime or something like that. It was bonkers. And Devonta Smith looks awesome. Add him into that offense with what we've seen from A.J. Brown. They're just well-rounded. And again, I don't want to take a victory lap too soon because we are still early here, but go back on this channel. I might actually put this on my TikTok. Follow me on TikTok. I'm trying to use that more. But I said the Eagles are a 12-13 win team that probably gets bounced in the first round of the playoffs, but second easiest schedule in the league with a well-rounded roster with no glaring weaknesses. They can win a variety of ways. That's a 12 or 13 win team in the making. And 3-0 start, and some people are saying they're the best team in the NFL right now, which if you're talking about who's playing the best football right now, yeah, I can get behind that argument. So, hey, good returns early on for Philadelphia, and you look at their upcoming schedule, it is not that challenging. We'll see, in like 3 weeks they play the Cowboys. We'll see where Dak is, but that's the only game over the next 5 that I'm really kind of concerned about. They do have the Jags this week, which that'll be kind of an interesting game. I didn't anticipate being excited for Eagles-Jags at 1 o'clock, but that could be a fun one. But if the Eagles win that one, Dak doesn't play in 3 weeks, this team may well start 8-0. So you heard it here first. And then the Packers, it wasn't pretty. That was not pretty. 14-12 against the Bucs. 26 points in a game between Brady and Rodgers was not something I would have anticipated, being told, tell me that before the season and I'm telling you you're a liar. But that being said, the Packers engineered a win. And kind of like what I said with the Rams earlier, they're not doing it at their highest level. They're not doing it fully at 100%, but they're getting wins. And I can respect that. So winning on the fly is no easy task. And I'm still thinking they're going to be able to figure out that wide receiver room, get more of Romeo Doubs, get Christian Watson up to speed. And I think those young guys by the end of the season are the ones that we're talking about, kind of leading this Green Bay offense moving forward. But hey, that's going to do it for my Week 4 NFL Power Rankings. Tell me what you think down below in the comment section. Apologies for my tangents, but who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? How would you have handled my top 3 conundrum I found myself in? Where would you put your favorite team? Love to have your thoughts. It's a conversation down below, and it's only one-sided if it's just me, so let me hear your takes down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me out a ton. If you're new right here, want to see more football content in your life, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and until next time, my name is Tej, signing off.